Hey everyone, Tina Hogan Grant here with my Cuppa A Natter that I like to do twice a month on a Monday. I like to invite authors into my home. We talk about books, writing, life as an author, and tonight Ivan Scott is joining me. How are you this evening?
Tina, I am great. I am so happy to be here. And before we get started talking about me, I would like to extend my congratulations to you. You're up to the 8th book in the, is it the Sabella series? Dream Big, I think, is the next one. So congratulations. That was great to see. And I'm sure those are fantastic books.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the Sabella series actually is finally complete.
Great.
And it's strange because it kind of feels like, oh, my buddies, my friends, I want, but I'm glad that the series is ended. It is 8 books, you are correct. Now I'm starting something new. So I'm excited, but I'm also kind of still missing them a little bit. And I like what some of the readers, they say, well, maybe in a couple of years they'll whisper in your ear with another story. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when we write, oh, I was just going to say, when we finish our books, it's like saying goodbye to a friend. Our characters, it's tough to say goodbye to them. So
it is. It really is, because they over the, I think, 4 years I've been writing the Sabella series. So I really felt like they were my friends. And it's like, no, come back. But, we'll see what happens. Never say never, as you would say.
right.
But I'm excited to talk to you about your books. But before we get started, we have a few people joining us. So I do want to say hello and acknowledge you wonderful readers that come join us on these chats. And we have, I'll pop them up. We have Virgie. She says hello.
Hey, Virgie.
Says hello.
Karen.
And another Karen says hello from St. Louis.
Yeah.
We have Lori here. Hey, Lori.
Hi, Lori.
We have Janet. We have Barbara. We have Darlene. Hello, ladies. So, Ivan, number one, I booked you about 6 months ago. So I've been excited to talk to you because right away, the titles of your books, Redhead. Hello.
Yeah. I knew you'd be calling sooner or later.
I know, right? So, okay, this is going to be a fun chat. But before we get into your books, just give me a little bit background to you. Just whatever you want to share with the rest of the world.
Sure. Well, the most of my book, or all of my books, have a redheaded heroine, and that comes from my wife, who is also a ginger, who I just adore. And so I take a lot of the stuff that happens with us, some of the things that she's been through, some of the adversity that she's gone through in her life, and incorporated it into my books. And it's like, they talk about sometimes when you get writer's block, or when, writers just can't come up with a story. All I have to do is look on the other side of the bed or the other side of the kitchen. And I'm like, okay, right there, we're going to add that to the book. So it makes it so much easier. And it's funny because this weekend we went to a concert, and I just remember she was talking with somebody, and I just stood back and just looked at her, and it was just like she was glowing. It was like, the angels singing and all that. And I was like, wow, how lucky I am to be married to her. And also she's such a big influence on the book. So it's just something that worked out, just perfectly. I started writing, I've been writing all my life, but really got serious probably about 5-6 years ago. And with my first book, I traditionally tried to publish it and got rejection after rejection after rejection. And thank goodness there was Amazon KDP, there was barnesandnoble.com, and some other outlets to be able to self-publish. And so I was able to get the books out, and through social media, do some marketing and make some, contacts, do some great networking. And so I've been really blessed and really fortunate to have these tools to be able to get my books out. And just so, everybody knows, and, if you're a writer as well, I think the rejection count is up to 631 over this 5 years that I've been doing this, and the 4 books that I have. So when you have passion for something and you don't want anybody else to tell you what you can and can't do, you just go forward. And I guess I'm an example of that. And hopefully what we talk about tonight and the examples that I will share will motivate, our listeners and our watchers out there that just say, hey, if Ivan Scott can do it, boom, I can do anything myself. So, it's just one of those things in life. You have a goal and you do it. And so, like I said, I've been very fortunate to be able to do that. And then we'll talk about it probably a little bit later too, Tina, is I have dyslexia. And so that makes writing a little bit harder, but I'll share kind of the fun experience of how I get my stories done in the kind of roundabout way they go from point A to being published. So I think that'll be something fun that later on in the chat we'll get to.
Well, I love the message that you're portraying to writers that want to be published, that never to give up. Persistence pays off. It really, really does. And you look at people like Harry Potter. Her book was rejected 12, 13 times. What if she had just given up? You know,
Absolutely.
and it, you know, it's our passion that drives us. And if you have that strong passion, it's going to push you. And I did go with a publisher for my debut in 2018. It was horrible. I couldn't stand it because I had no control of my book. Absolutely no control. And so for me, after that, I decided to self-publish. And, you know, we all choose our route when it comes to publishing. Some people will stick with trying to go through the traditional publishers, tell them try that and don't like it. For me, I'll never go back. I love self-publishing. So my hat's off to you for sticking with it and pushing through. And you're up to 4 books, correct?
4 books. And I've got one coming out in April that we'll talk about and another one after that in the fall. So Tina, I tell you, it's like a drug. I can't stop. It's like, okay, take a break, go read some other people's books, do something. It's like, well, maybe I could just do 1 chapter. And then before you know it, I've got, you know, 20 pages written or, you know, 1,000 words written or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, you know, I'm addicted. I can't, you know.
It is a drug. It is totally a drug. I hear you. I have to write every day and I do set myself goals, a word count every day. That's how I get my books written. But if I don't write, it's not just that I'm disappointed I didn't write. It's that feeling of needing to write wasn't fulfilled. You know, my coffee in the morning or when I used to smoke, my cigarette. So for me, it's just something that I have to do every day.
Yes.
Just fulfill that passion. Let's start with the first book. Which one? You're going to have to remind me. I have the titles written down here, but which was the first book?
Redhead and a Blue Convertible.
I love these covers. I love these covers. They are
you know,
so vibrant.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's funny that you say that. And you know what, Tina, if you keep giving compliments like that, my head's going to be so big, it's going to be like off the screen. So the reason why I mentioned that is that, you know, I'm sure you've run into this as well when you did your self-publishing. You know, you have to do everything. You have to pay for marketing. You have to pay for the cover art. You have to pay for the format and all that. Didn't have the budget to do it. It was just too expensive. And so I'm like, you know what? It's like my father used to say, either you find a way or you find an excuse. So it's like, okay, how can I create a cover? I learned Photoshop, which was pretty tough, but I stuck with it. And so I thought, okay, go out and research other covers in your genre. So I went to the Barnes & Noble one day, took pictures of various covers that fit the genre that I was working in, and kind of took, you know, inspiration from those covers and then put my cover together. It was a lot of trial and error and a lot of, you know, okay, delete. Okay, let's try this again. Nope, let's delete that, and so on, and back and forth, back and forth. Finally, I came up with something that I liked. So, you know, with this cover, I was able to figure out, okay, I want to put leaves in it because it takes place in October. So I was able to, you know, do leaves. Okay, I want to turn this one. I want to put these here and so on. So it's like after a while, you know, doing Photoshop, it was like, wow, I can do this. And so it gave me a little confidence and a little boost to say, you know what? Yeah, you can create your covers. So, you know, people out there that are self-publishing that, you know, can't afford a graphic artist or want to do it themselves, or like you were talking about, want to keep control of your book. No problem at all. Do your Photoshop. You know, you might be able to create something that you think would be better than anybody else could create. So that was the story behind the cover. So basically, I started from scratch, and that's where the cover came from.
I'm impressed because I would not even know where to begin when it comes to the covers. I do splurge and get someone to do my covers, but the fact that you did the homework, you did the research, they look very professional.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just perfect. And so I'm sure by the time you got to cover number 4, you had this down.
It's funny because I did, but there was still, you know, because there's a gap in between, like when you write a book and then you get it out and all that, and then you start to write the next book, and then it's like as soon as that's done, okay, I got to create the cover. Okay, now wait a minute. Now I think I remember I do this and then so it gets a little easier, but still I have my stumbling blocks.
Yeah, okay. All right. We have a few more people joining us. I just want to pop out. And again, I'm talking to Ivan Scott. I'm sorry, Ivan, where are you? What part of the US are you in?
I'm in Atlanta.
Atlanta, Georgia?
Mm-hmm.
So what time is it there right now?
It is 12 minutes after 8 o'clock.
So you are 3 hours ahead of me. Okay.
Yes.
You got some nice comments on your covers. Let me see.
Oh, thank
Congrats
you.
on your covers. Very impressed.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Thank you,
Renee
Carol.
says, I believe you can create your own cover better than anyone. That is very true, because you have everything pictured in your mind. You know the colors you want.
Hmm.
So, like you said, it's your book. You own it, and throughout the whole process, you get to say everything, which is what I like about self-publishing. And what I
Hmm.
didn't like about self-publishing is when I wanted to put a book on sale, they would say, "Oh, it'll be 6 to 8 weeks." Well, how can I organize a marketing, you know,
Yeah.
session or whatever you want to call it, when you won't even tell me when the book's on sale? Well, now you just go into Amazon, click on sale, and the next
Hmm.
day it's there.
And you're ready to go.
Different
Sure.
things like that. You know,
Yeah.
one thing that surprised me, which I liked. What's the genres of your book?
They're romantic, contemporary romance, but kind of bordering on rom-com. There's lots of laughs, stupid, silly puns, silly things that happen as well. But at the end of the day, it's the traditional romance where you have a happily ever after. So I guess I'm not spoiling too much of it, but I've come to find out, and luckily I have not stepped on too many toes. But I found out that when you talk about writing a romance book, if it's not a HEA, happily ever after, it's not romance, and you better not do that. And so
Right.
luckily
Exactly.
I didn't, so I learned
That's
that
very
lesson
true.
without having to get my hand slapped.
Yeah, if you call it a romance, it has to be a HEA. That's for sure.
Oh
But
yeah.
I love the fact that you are a male writing romance. I just love that. There is
Yeah.
very few, as far as I know. I don't know many romance authors that are male. So
Yeah,
that
it's
part is just like, that's nice. I
yeah,
like it.
it's one of those, Tina, you probably, can understand, all of us can understand, in this day and age, where it just seems like one catastrophe after the other in the world or in our country or in our state, whatever. It's nice to be able to dive into a story and have some laughs and have a nice happily ever after, walk off into the sunset thing. And I think that, when people talk about, well, that's not real, that you put that in your book, that's kind of, fantasy or whatever. Well, I think that's why people read books, and that's why they go to the movies, and that's why they like to listen to music, because it's an escape from sometimes when you're having troubles, with your life. I'm going to jump into this for a while, and it's going to take my mind off my troubles. I want a
Yeah.
happy ending. I want the boy and the
You
girl to get together,
exactly. If you want to go to Alaska, go find a book take place in Alaska. If you want to go to Italy, and it's like they say, a book will take you to any place you want to go. I just love that
That's
saying
right.
because it's so true. It's so true. Let's get back to your debut novel,
Sure.
Redhead and the Corvette, Blue Corvette. This one was published when?
This was in 2019.
2019.
Mhm.
And how long did it take you to write this one?
This one took me about 6, 7 months to do.
Not
But
bad.
yeah, it wasn't too bad. But it's like you were talking about. It's like once you start, like probably with your books as well, and with people that write their books. Once you get going, and it's just like, okay, I'm going to write this. I'm going to write this. Boom, I'm good. Okay, here's the next thing that happens. Here's the next thing that happens, and it just kind of flowed, and it all kind of came together. So that was with the first one. It was an eye-opening experience, similar to creating the cover. It was like, wow, this is the process, but everybody has their own process.
Do you?
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and we were talking about process, and I forget. I think it was Virgie that might have asked if I'm a planner or a pantster.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, a plotter is somebody that will write everything out that's going to happen in the book, and then they follow it like a roadmap. And so that's how they construct their book. With me, I'm a total pantster. I think the dyslexia has something to it.
Me too.
And I brought an example. So this is the Redhead Who Loves Hemingway. This is how it all started. So this is how I write. All my stuff is in here. I write it all in longhand. I have to
Oh
have
wow.
colored tabs. I have to I have to have highlighters and scratch stuff out and that kind of thing. And then I had to print out, like, because they in the Hemingway book, they travel around New York City, so I had to print out a map so I could see it, and I like put stars by, okay, they're here. Number one is the hotel, number two is this, and so on and so on. And then I went on Google Maps and I printed off. So I got a visual of this is exactly where they are and this is where they're going. So with my,
Wow.
and then this one is, let's see what this one is. So this is a more of a detailed city map of, so I could see exactly where they were going. And I think, Tina, the reason why I have to visualize it is because of the dyslexia. It's like, if I can see it, then I can write it. So that is a big help with me. But I have to write everything in my books, in my notebooks, and then transfer it to the laptop. So I tell you, it's the timing of doing it takes so much longer. If I were to like do it straight on the laptop, I'd probably have 50 books by now. But
Yeah,
that's
I
just the way
mean,
that I'm
writing
wired, and
it
that's the way that I
longhand.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but whatever works for us, that's what we're going to do. But I do like, you remind me of yesterday, because yesterday I'm writing a new book, and you're talking about the time frame and how long it takes you to write the book. I
Mhm.
wanted to ask number one, the fourth book, did you find it was quicker to write, even with all the process that you do with the notepad and everything? Did you find you were writing a little bit quicker?
Yeah, I think it was because the story was a little bit more ingrained in my head. It's like I'll have like going back to the pastor. I'll have the story in my head, and then it comes from my head, and I just write it out in my notebooks. And the funny thing is that sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to go down this avenue. I'm going to go down this road this way. This is where we're going. You know what? That's not going to work. Scratch that, scratch that. Let's move them back out. Okay, let's try this again, and so on and so on. And then we go from there. But it did take me a little bit shorter as opposed to the first book, because I kind of had an idea. Okay, sometimes we it's like you're cutting the fat. It's like, you know what? That's nice, but you don't really need that. You can kind of, you don't want the story to bog down. So I think that's that as you write more books, that becomes a little more clear to you.
And especially with them all being related, the character, the redhead, I'm sure is easier to write, even though she is your wife or based on your wife. And I found that when I wrote the Sabella series, the one I just finished, by the time I got to book number 6, I was able to kick out the next 3 books in, like, well, not kick them out, but write the first draft under 3
Yeah.
months. And
Yeah.
the next come out in 6 months. Now that series is over with, I'm starting completely with new characters, new spaces, new areas, and it's taking longer. And I
Yeah.
just saying the other day, because I write down when I started the book, my word count every day. And I was looking back at when I started this book. I'm like, this is taking a little bit longer. But yesterday I spent the day researching Alaska, because part of this
Mhm.
book takes place in Alaska. And I've never been to Alaska. I know absolutely nothing about Alaska. And I was doing the same thing as you. And I found this town, and I found what everything's going to just fall into place. But now I have to research the towns, how these people get there, how long does it take to fly there, which airport do they go to? So I
Uh-huh.
understand but starting a new book with new characters, my not kicking, but writing this book is taking a little bit longer. So,
Yeah.
but it's okay. Hopefully it'll be worth the wait for my readers. That's all I can
Oh,
say.
I'm sure it will be.
Um, with the redhead and the blue Corvette, can you just give us a little background on
Sure.
what the show's about without giving too much away?
Sure. So this is it's Redhead and a Blue Convertible, and the premise behind this book, and this, like we talked about, this kind of came from my wife. Um, the heroine in this book is Sarah Farnsworth, and she is a heart surgeon in Atlanta, and she loses a patient on the operating table. The patient is just one of those things where there's nothing she could do about it, but she takes it really hard. Well, she calls her mother, who's back in England, in London, and her mother is a famous heart surgeon, and so she wanted to follow in her footsteps. Her mother was very domineering, and she was very strict with her. Didn't cut her any slack. Was just really kind of just really rotten to her, to be honest. So she calls her and says, hey, this happened. And so her mother, says, you know what, this never happened to me, and just bashes into her, just lays into her really bad. And already she's in a fragile space because she lost a patient on the table. I mean, it's traumatic for her. And then her mother kind of adds on to it. And the crushing blow is that the mother says, you know what, I'm ashamed that you're my daughter. And then leaves the conversation like that. And Sarah is just devastated. She can't go
Yeah.
back to the operating room. It's like she's traumatized, can't go anywhere near the hospital. So she takes a leave of absence, and the chief of staff at the hospital is a good friend of hers. And so he's like, you know what, I've got a job for you. I've got a friend that needs to be driven around Atlanta. He's got 24 hours to clear up all of his affairs, and then he has to leave town. Would you drive him around Atlanta? Would you look after him for 24 hours? And so she's like, you know what? I can't go back to the hospital. I might as well do this. And so they get together, And so she takes him around to all the his favorite places that in Atlanta, his friends, the places that he went to for years. So it's kind of like a last tour of the battlefield sort of thing. But we don't know why he has to leave Atlanta, but they spend 24 hours together. So that's the whole premise of the book. And the way that I got that idea, I remember reading a story about an older lady who called a taxi cab late at night. So the cab driver came to pick her up. She had her suitcases all packed. And so he thought, well, I'm taking her to the airport. I'm taking her to the bus station. She's going on a trip or whatever. The lady asked him to take her. The lady asked the cab driver to take her to all the places that were special to her, where her kids went to school, the church where her and her husband got married, just all these places that are just very sentimental to her. So the cab driver thought, well, this is kind of strange, but I'll just go with it. So at the end of the trip, the lady tells him where to go. And so he takes her and drops her off. It's an assisted living facility. So this is the last time that this lady is going to have the freedom to go and see the things and that were very special to her before her life changes. And so I thought, wouldn't that be a really cool thing? And then it got me to thinking, what would the reader think if I had 24 hours to see and do the things that I wanted to do before basically my freedom was kind of taken away? Where would I go? Who would I see? What would I do? What would that be like? And then so that's kind of the basis behind it. But going back to what we were talking about with my wife is very successful in marketing. She has been a VP. She wants to be a CMO. It's like her thing. It's like, that's her identity. Well, for the first time in her career, and this is when I started writing the book, she lost her job. She was let go. It was it wasn't a deal where she did anything wrong, but it was one of those where they brought in new leadership. I want my own people. And she got let go. And she hit rock bottom, not as bad as Sarah, because that was pretty traumatic. But it was that thing, nobody wants me anymore. I'm a terrible marketer. I don't know, what I'm doing. I'm dumb. I can't do anything right, that kind of thing. So luckily, within about 6 months, she got another job. Everything was back to normal. Everything was cool. But that was kind of the thing with Sarah, is that she hit rock bottom. And so it's like we kind of lean on the people that are special to us to kind of bring us back from the dead. And then once we get through that adversity, it's like, if that should happen again, it's like, hey, no big deal. Went through it before. I'm going to kick its ass again. That kind of thing. And so that's the idea. And that's kind of the premise when you read Redhead in a Blue Convertible. It's kind of like, meeting that somebody special, or meeting that friend that kind of gets you through that tough time.
Right.
But what's funny is that the guy that she drives around, she kind of pulls him out of some things too. And I won't tell you what it is, but she kind of pulls him through some things as well. So it's kind of a cool little deal. But that's the first book.
Sounds intriguing. I'm intrigued. Now, when you wrote the first book, the Redhead book, did you know that there will be more to follow? Or
yeah. Like we talked about, it's like when I wrote the first one, I'm like, okay, let me get the next one. Okay, come on, what's the idea behind the second one? I mean, I was like a golden retriever with a human, like holding the ball. Okay, come on, okay, throw it. So that was kind of like I'm like, okay, what's the next book? Let's get on it right now.
And they all can be read as a standalone.
Yes.
Okay, now the main character is in all the books, correct?
No, it's different heroines in each book. Yeah, so it's a standard. Yeah.
Okay, but they're all redheads. That's the theme. They're all redheads.
Yeah.
How does your wife feel about you writing all these books based on necessarily her or her experiences?
Well, I can't tell you everything that goes on with us. So, she's like my clearinghouse. She's like, no, don't put that in there. So, yeah. So, no, I'm teasing about that. I don't, but she's, Tina, it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of a romantic thing where, it's like, well, who wouldn't want somebody to, like, especially your significant other, to write about you and your times together and the special moments that you share. And I always tell her, it's like, one day, if I should go before you go, you'll have these books, and it's kind of like, I'll still be here with you, because all the stories are kind of a lot of the stuff that happened to us. And so it's kind of like a little bit of a microcosm of what we went through together. And I think, just reading over, you probably read over my bio, I'm a big Hemingway fan. And it's funny because when I read his books, his stories and all that, I kind of feel like, oh my God, you're writing exactly how I'm feeling right now, and so I have that connection. And so I think with my books, with my wife, and her nickname is Red. So that's why, her name is Kim, but I call her Red because of her red hair. So,
Right.
but I think that, this is something that, and knock on wood, if I should depart the earth tomorrow, no matter what, nobody can ever take away these books, and nobody can ever take away the stories, and they'll live forever. And hopefully the reader will, kind of feel the same way. It's like, wow, that was a cool story. I can identify with that, and be something special for them forever as well, just like Hemingway is for me.
Right. That's the legacy you're leaving behind. And that's very true. I mean, my father was an author. He wrote 36 books.
Oh, wow.
And that's what inspired me. And when I pick up one of his books, he's passed away in 2010, but when I pick up one of his books, I feel I hear his voice. And it just brings me closer to him. It makes me feel like he wrote these words and he's talking to me. And it's just such a comforting feeling that he left these behind. Yeah. And I totally get what you mean by saying your wife will pick up these books. Hopefully that won't, won't happen anytime soon or anything like that. Yeah. I think it's really sweet. I think it's really sweet. Can we see the covers of the other 3 books and let us know which orders that they were in?
Absolutely. And we'll go in order here. So the second one is The Redhead and the Ghostwriter. And you want me to give like the quick background on each book?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
So The Redhead and the Ghostwriter, the inspiration for this book is I've always been intrigued by people that have extraordinary talent, whether it's a painter or a writer or a dancer, musician, whatever. And then one day they hit the wall and they just totally dismiss all of their talent. And they just, whatever, I'm done, because maybe it's a traumatic, episode in their life. They lose a loved one. Just something happens and they're just like, you know what, I'm just not doing it anymore. So that's the idea behind this book. The main character is a Pulitzer Prize winning author named Jasper George, and he kind of throws away his writing career. He only writes one book. He wins the Pulitzer, but he only writes the one book. He has a traumatic event in his life, and so he just throws it away, and he lives the rest of his life, the rest of his days, in the bottom of a whiskey bottle. He's just, he's just done with it. So the redhead is Sienna McCaslin, and she owns and operates a bar. It's a beach bar, and it's called Ghostwriters. And the cool thing about the beach bar is it's a bookstore in the daytime. And then when the nighttime comes, they change it around and it's a bar. So it's kind of like a book bar where people come and there's a crazy band and they talk about their favorite books. And they talk about their favorite authors. And so it's kind of like a literary Studio 54 kind of thing. So that's that's kind of the hangout where they do their thing. So a aspiring author, Piper Marbury, comes to, and the fictional place is called Turtle Point. And I based it off of Hilton Head Island in South Carolina because that's where our family vacations every summer. So I had lots of, how we talked about going to Alaska and all that. Well, I was actually able to go to Hilton Head so I could kind of pick out locations and kind of get the feel for it. So Piper Marbury comes to Hilton Head. And so she asked Jasper, he's like, hey, I'm an aspiring author. Can you help me with my novel? And he kind of blows her off and says, no, I don't do that anymore and all that. So finally, Sienna says, hey, why don't you give her a chance? Why don't you give her a shot? She wants to write this book. So they end up working together. So it was kind of cool because and Tina, you could probably identify with this, and the people that are authors can kind of identify with this. I wrote a lot of the experiences that Piper's going through with rejection and trying to figure out, how do I write this novel? What's the best way to do it? Am I showing and not telling? Am I doing an info dump? Those kind of things. So it's kind of cool to, relate those experiences. So we go forward and the book, they work on the book. And so they find somebody that's going to read it. So Sienna's like, you're spending a lot of time with Piper, and and Jasper doesn't know this, but Sienna's been in love with him ever since they were in high school. So she's like, you know what? It's never going to happen. He's kind of thrown everything away. He doesn't want to be loved. He wants to drink and carouse and do whatever with his friends. So she goes to California, and so she leaves Turtle Point, goes to California, and she's going to open up another book bar similar to Ghostwriters. So the premise is, or not the premise, but the idea is, okay, well, what does Jasper do? Does he go to California to go get her and bring her back? And if he goes to bring her back, is she going to come back? So that's kind of the cliffhanger that we have going here. So, but that's the idea behind Redhead and Ghostwriter, which is kind of like a beach romance.
Intriguing.
Okay. And this one, the third one, A Redhead in Tottenham.
Okay.
in this book, the main character is a pro soccer player, and he plays for New York in the Major League Soccer. And the adversity that he has is he has not forgiven himself for giving up the game-winning goal for his team a couple years ago. He still carries that burden, and he's like, until we win a championship, I'm never going to get that back. I'm sorry I let my teammates down. I just feel awful about it. So one night he's out on the practice field with his best friend. A storm comes and blows stuff around the field, and Mark is taken from Earth by an angel up to heaven, because apparently he's died. So they go to sort it out. And so the angel's talking with her boss, and the character, Ryan Tarkington is his name. Ryan says, you know what? I don't understand why I'm here. I didn't die. And they're like, well, wait a minute. There was a giant post that came flying through the air. Didn't it hit you? And he's like, no, it didn't. And then the angel was like, well, it looked like it was going to hit you. So I took you out just before. Oh, shoot. So it's like, okay, we got to get you back to Earth. Well, the problem is that they go to bring him back to Earth. His body's been cremated. So,
oh no!
It's like, okay, now what do we do? So they're trying to find him a soccer player to put him to kind of resume his career, kind of put him back on Earth so he can, keep moving forward. So they can't find him a soccer player that's suitable.
No.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's crazy. But this one takes place partly in England, correct?
Yes, it does. Yeah, we're See, we're getting to that, because here's the thing. So they're in heaven. They can't find him a soccer player. The closest thing they can find is the owner of the Tottenham Hotspur football club in London. Well, Tottenham is a suburb north of London. So
Right.
they say, okay, we don't have a soccer player, but we could put you in this guy's body. He's getting ready to die. So we can put you in his body, and at least let you do this temporarily till we can find you a soccer player. So he's like, I don't know. Well, while he's deciding, the goalkeeper for the women's Tottenham Hotspur team comes into the office, and the problem that's going on with her is the owner, the guy that's getting ready to die, is just a real jerk. He's in it for himself. He doesn't care about the women's team. He wants to close out the women's team, sell everything off, and kind of pocket the money. So what happens is that Ryan sees this, and he's like, gosh, I wish somebody would help that girl. And the angel that escorts him down is like, well, you could help her, because this guy's getting ready to die. You could be Chadwick Sutton. That's the owner, the name of the owner. And he's like, well, I don't know. I don't want to be an owner of a soccer team. I want to play soccer. Can we do this temporarily? So they're like, okay, we'll do it temporarily. And he's like, fine, we'll do it temporarily. I'll help this girl, and then you find me a soccer player, and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to go play soccer. So it turns out he ends up helping her, and it's cool because it's an enemies to lovers kind of thing, because everybody loathes Chadwick Sutton, the original owner. So then Ryan comes in and takes over the body. He's like, God, why does everybody hate me? And it's like, well, they don't hate you. They hate Chadwick Sutton. So he totally turns everything around. He becomes the nice guy. He, totally just changes the culture. So the soccer player, she's from Scotland. Her name is Samantha Densmore. They end up falling in love. So he's like, okay, you know what? I think I can do this. If I'm going to be with Samantha, I can do that. I can be the owner. I'll throw my career away. That's how in love he is with this girl. So he finally makes the proclamation. Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, Ryan, we found you another body. You can't be Chadwick Sutton anymore. And it's like, oh my God. What? Why? Wait a minute. What are you doing to me? You've already screwed up my career. Now that I've got the second career, you're going to take me out again? And it's like, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. So he ends up leaving. He's not Chadwick Sutton anymore. So he's kind of in a weird not hyperspace, but kind of in a weird place. So it's like, okay, how are we going to get Samantha and Ryan back together again? So you're going to have to read to see if they get
very intriguing. And it also sounds like you write some comedy in the romances too.
Yes. Oh, Tina, you got to have comedy. You got to have some laughs. You got to have something to get you all chuckled,
I want to ask real quick with the Tottenham one, especially because it takes place in England. Did you use English slang in the book?
I did use English slang, and it's tough, Tina. I wish I would have known that you were from England, because I would have contacted you and said, Tina, what do you think about this word? Because I had a review from a independent publishing company in London, and they're great. It's Ella and Alex with Not for Vanity Publishing, and they did a review. They put me on the website, and they're great. I love them, they love me, it's all that. But in the review, they said, some of the slang was okay, some of it was a little out of place. And I was like, oh no, I screwed it up. So, but just my heart was in it. My best interest. I tried to get the slang right. So, but yeah, there was slang in it.
I was just curious. Because I still use some English slang. I've been here 30 plus years, but there's still certain words I can't get rid of them. Like my favorite saying is I'm bloody knackered, which means I'm tired.
Yeah.
But I say it all the time. I'm bloody knackered.
Yeah. Oh, God, I love the way you say that. It's funny you mentioned that because in the Redhead and a Blue Convertible, Sarah's from London. And so I used some slang in there. And I used is it knackered? Knackered. I used knackered in there. And the other one that I used is she says she talks to the Billy Caldwell is the gentleman that she is driving around town. She says to Billy, "Oh, I am knackered. I am off to Bedfordshire." And he's like, "Bedfordshire? You're gonna leave?" And she's like, No. Bedfordshire means I'm going to bed. I'm tired. So was I on point with that? Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had a heck of a time when I first came to this country. I mean, things that if I ask for chips over here, I'll get a bag of potato chips. Chips in England are French fries.
Yeah.
Just little things. But I could talk for hours about that. But we're going to move along. I know you have one more book to talk about, but before we get to that,
yes,
you are going to do a live read.
I will do a live read. Yes,
let you do the live read and tell us a little bit about the book, because I believe it's the latest one. And then I want to switch over and answer some of these questions. I see a lot of questions popping up, and I want to make room for those questions too. So, Ivan, I'm going to hand it to you. You can tell us a little bit about the next book and do the live read afterwards. How's that sound?
Okay, sounds good. Yes.
Okay. And let's see the book too.
I'm sorry.
And let's see that book too.
We'll see the book. Here we go. And what's cool is, okay, so it's The Redhead Who Loves Hemingway. And so I took my two passions, my wife, my redhead, Red, and Hemingway. And I'm like, why don't I put these two things together in a book? It's like the two things that you love. And so maybe that's probably why this book didn't take as long to write as the other ones, because to me, it was easy because it was things that I was interested in and loved. The one thing that I wanted to point out, we talked about the book covers. Let me see, I'll move up here on the book cover. So when Red and I went to New York, not last December, but the December before last, I guess, December of 2022, we went to the New York Public Library, and then we went to the Scribner's Building. The Scribner's Building is where Hemingway and Fitzgerald worked on their manuscripts with Max Perkins, was the famous editor. Yeah. So right now, I think it's like a women's clothing store, but you still see the framework. Some of it from the old pictures is still kind of the same. But I took this picture from across the street, and then I took it into Photoshop. And so this picture was my picture. And then I just kind of, put the stuff on it and then added the redhead and all that. So, yeah. So I was really fortunate to be able to get a picture that worked. But real quick, if you guys if you guys like, movies about literary, that kind of thing, check out the movie Genius with Colin Firth and Jude Law. Laura Linney's in it and Nicole Kidman. And it is about Max Perkins, the famous editor, and his workings with Thomas Wolfe, but also there's Fitzgerald is in it, and Hemingway is in it. And so if you like those old kind of writers and all that, it's a really cool story. And who doesn't love Colin Firth? I mean, he's one of my favorite actors, and he plays Max Perkins. And so, yeah, but this is yes. And in the movie, they show this building, and I'm sure they did, AI and all that, but this is the building that they showed. So, but yeah, so it's kind of special when I saw it, that it was like, wow, Hemingway and Fitzgerald, wow, they were like right there, that kind of thing. So, the premise behind The Redhead Who Loves Hemingway, which this book is more of a rom-com than the other ones are. This is more of a traditional rom-com. The premise behind this one is you have a college professor, George Callahan, from East Tennessee State University. So he's from Tennessee. So he is a big Hemingway fan, and the fictional Hemingway Historical Society has loaned him a very rare and the very first copy of The Sun Also Rises for an exhibit that they're doing. So once the exhibit's over, he has to take it back to New York. So he brings it back to New York, and in the process of getting it back to New York, he runs into the redhead, Darcy Davenport, who is just the sweetest girl in the world. But the thing with Darcy is that she's very free-spirited. She's always getting into trouble, but always figures out a way out of it. But she's always like, oh, I've been in tougher spots than this. Don't worry about it. We'll get through, that kind of thing. So she's always getting George. They meet in the Scribner's building. She's always getting George into these death-defying situations. They have to jump off a ledge. They have to run from the mafia. She dresses him up in a drag bar to get away from the bad guys that are chasing them. So it's just one adventure after the other. And in all the time, the book gets lost. Darcy loses the book by mistake. And so the whole weekend, they're running around New York trying to find the book. And they have to find it by Sunday night, because that's when the big party is. And that's when they expect the Hemingway Historical Society expects the book back. So they have to find it by Sunday night. So it's one thing after the other. Okay, where's the book? They're always a step behind and all that. So it's their adventures. And my Red is a big Ed Sheeran fan. So there's a part in the book where through shenanigans of, whatever, you'll have to read it to find out. But Ed Sheeran does a song for them and they dance together to it. So it's kind of a cool little, thing. And of course, Red's like, oh, that would never happen. It's like, that's why it's a book, because it's a fantasy. So you can imagine it happening, that sort of thing. So, but I'm not going to tell you what happens, but if they find the book or not, because, maybe finding the book is not the most important thing. Maybe them getting together is. But the other thing you got to think of is, if they don't find the book, George is going to get fired from his job. The Hemingway Historical Society is not going to be very happy. There might be some legal ramifications. And so it's one of those where, okay, it's Darcy's fault that the book was lost, and all this heat is going to come down on George. So is he going to forgive her? Is he going to say, you know what, this isn't going to work between us? Or is he going to say, you know what, I'm so in love with you, fine, I don't care if I've lost the book, but you'll have to read the book to find out.
Read the book to find out. I'm intrigued again. They all sound really, really good. But I'm going to hand it over to you now for the live read. We are all anxiously waiting to hear a little bit from you both.
All right. Okay, so this is from Redhead Who Loves Hemingway. And just to give you the context of it, shoot. Well, I'm just going to read it. I might give away parts of the plot that I just said. Okay, you got to read the book to find out. But Darcy has walked away. She's like, you know what? I've caused George so much trouble. I just need to leave him alone. And so they get separated, and she walks away from the Scribner's building where they're having the big party. So this is the Sunday night. Okay. Darcy spent the night walking around the streets of New York. She had no idea where she was going, either on her walk or in her life. When the sun rose between the buildings, it illuminated the place she retreated to in times of trouble. A slice of golden light warmed the morning chill as it splashed on the steps of the New York Public Library. Darcy walked to the base of the stairs and looked at the lions. Her words came out in small puffs of white steam. I'm back. And you won't believe this, but I need your help, she said to them. After a few seconds, she looked down, shook her head, and said, funny how much I've said that over the years. Real quick, the other thing, Darcy, she can't keep a job because she keeps getting fired because she caused explosions, she caused a fire. I mean, nothing, it was just accidents, but she's just kind of accident prone. So that's why she says, so funny that I've said that over the years, because she can't seem to keep a job. After taking a seat on the stairs, feeling the chilly morning cement through her jeans, she leaned forward and watched the people walk by. Since it was Monday morning, she figured those people were on their way to work. One of these days, I'll join them. If I ever figure out a way to keep a job. She shook her head, leaned forward, and placed her forehead on her knees. Through the sounds of buses, drivers honking their horns, and people discussing the Giants' victory the night before, she heard a voice. Compy turned his head and grinned and pointed, and there, ahead, all he could see, as wide as all the world, great, high, and unbelievably white in the sun, was the square top of Kilimanjaro. And then he knew that was where he was going. When George and Darcy first meet, she recites that line in the bookstore, and he doesn't see her, but he hears it, and then that's what causes him to come find her. So it was from Hemingway's book, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, and so that's the thing that brings them together. That's why I put that in there. So just to give you a little context. Darcy's head snapped up. George looked at her face. Her red eyelids surrounded tired hazel eyes. With no makeup, the only color looking back at him was the tan freckles he loved seeing in her chilled pink cheeks. When she saw the face where the voice came from, she allowed herself a smile. George, she said, her voice soft. Who's George? He asked. Well, since the weekend's over, I thought it was time to get back to the real world. George smiled and shook his head. Bucky is fine with me. In the story, from the very first day they meet, she never calls him George. She says, Bucky's much cuter and it suits you better. You're a Bucky. You're not a George. So that's why when he says, well, who's George? Because she's called him Bucky. So that's kind of their thing together. Bucky is fine with me. Her face glowed. It is? After George nodded, she asked, what are you doing here? Would you believe I got lost on my way out of town? But how? You won the grant. I saw you and Van Brocklin shaking hands. How could you lose? You know me. If you aren't around, how am I going to know where to go? Bertha is his domineering ex-girlfriend. And of course, they broke up the night before, but that's who Bertha is. So you have Bertha now. I saw you two holding hands and kissing. She looked away, then stood. Look, I'm sorry about what I did. You have everything you've ever wanted now. You don't need me. Darcy, I've lived a whole life in one weekend, all because of you. You know what I like the most? Tell me it was jumping out of the MetLife building. They have running from the bad guys and they have to jump out of a ledge out of the MetLife building. That part I put them on a lower floor because there's only so far you can go with fantasy. So don't think that they jumped off the top and survived, but they had to jump out of the building to get away from the bad guys. George grinned. That was in the top 5. When a laugh slipped between Darcy's lips, George told her, knowing you would be there for me no matter what, knowing you would be there for me no matter if I won the grant or not. Darcy looked around the steps, then her eyes found his. It is? George smiled. Well, I'm glad you think so. She paused, then asked, was Bertha mad about me being at the hotel? Well, now that you mentioned it, yes, she was. And she still kissed you? About that, let me explain. You don't need to explain. It's okay. I know you love her, and I'm nothing but a troublemaker. But it's like I always say, I was left. Once again, George pressed his finger on Darcy's lips. I know, you were left unsupervised. That was her catchphrase. It was like when she would explain why she lost her job or why the building caught on fire or whatever. She's like, it wasn't my fault. I was unsupervised. So that's kind of their little tagline. With his finger still on her lips, she mumbled, then nodded. Shut the hell up. Then he smiled and removed his finger. Darcy, you saw Bertha kissing me, but you didn't see me pushing her away. Her face twisted into a state of wonder. You did? Why? Because I didn't want to kiss her. You didn't? No, I didn't. I wanted to kiss you.
Oh.
Darcy's face of wonder turned into elation. You did? George nodded. She paused as her eyebrows dropped close to her eyes. Wait, you didn't want to kiss her? And why aren't you at the airport now? George smiled. Well, it's a funny story. I lost both things I thought I wanted. What does this mean? Well, George began, it was a heck of a weekend. Sunday night, Bertha turned me down. Then this morning, I turned Van Brocklin down. And the explanation for that, Howard Van Brocklin is the president of the Hemingway Historical Society. So the Van Brocklin decided to give George a grant so he could continue his Hemingway research. George turned him down. He also broke up with Bertha. So basically the two things he thought he wanted in his life, he was like, no. Oh. So from wonder to elation, back to wonder, Darcy's face changed expression once again. Bertha turned you down? And you turned down the grant? Bucky, how could you? It's what you've always wanted. Yeah, I suppose. But this weekend, I found out there are more important things in the world. I found out for the first time in my life, I don't need an awful girlfriend or some silly grant. You don't? Darcy asked, her eyebrows high on her forehead. George shook his head. No, I don't. I got as far as getting on the plane, then something made me realize I was making a mistake. Before they closed the door, I ran up the aisle and got off. He paused, then reached for her hand. When she grasped it, he said, I had to find you. You came here for me? Darcy asked with sparkling eyes. But how'd you know I'd be here? Because I remember every detail about you. The sparkle triggered a full blush in her already frosty cheeks as she looked away, then down the sidewalk. She shook her head and couldn't look up at George. He watched her for a few seconds, then quipped, "Wow, this time I don't need Ed Sheeran to leave you speechless. I'd say I'm making progress." Darcy giggled, then asked, "But what about the grant?" "I don't want it. On the way over here, I called Van Brocklin to tell him I'm turning him down." Darcy shook her head. "You didn't?" "Yeah, I did. I did it because there were more important things I had to do." Darcy asked, "Like what?" I had to tell you you were right. Right about everything." "What was I right about?" "You told me at the end of this weekend I'd fall in love with you." "Well," Darcy's cheeks now flushed, warm with crimson. She tucked a strand of cinnamon hair behind her ear and adjusted her ball cap. "I'm sorry you have to see me like this. I look a mess." "Well," George told her, "it's like our old friend once told us. You look perfect." And that's Ed Sheeran's song, "You Look Perfect Tonight." A smile leaped into Darcy's face at the same time she leaped into George's arms. They spun around the steps of the library, much to the smiles and polite applause of the morning pedestrians watching their moment play out. They continued holding each other, reveling in the fact, or let's see, I always mispronounce this word, reveling in the fact that they found each other. That's why I'm a writer and not a speaker. Darcy leaned back and asked, "So, what was that thing you said about wanting to kiss me?" Before George answered, Darcy's nervous habit of going off in different directions returned. "Because I've seen a lot of rom-coms, and usually at the end of the movie, they kiss, and that's kind of cheesy, but if you..." George brought her to him and pressed his lips to hers. The applause increased, as well as a collective "ah" from the crowd. After the kiss ended, he let her go. When she stumbled, George reached out and steadied her with his hands. "Wow, our first official kiss." "That was kind of cool," she replied as she wobbled. "It was worth the wait," George told her, holding her upright. "Come on," he said, grasping her hand. "Let's go get some breakfast." George turned and led her to the bottom of the stairs. When they got to the sidewalk, Darcy looked up and her face glowed. "Sergeant Wayne, you are a piece of work. You know that? How did you know we'd be here?" Sergeant Wayne saluted and told her, "Ma'am, Professor Callahan called me from the airport and had me pick him up. He had a feeling you'd be here." She looked at George. "You know me too well." So real quick, Sergeant Wayne is Darcy's friend, and he's responsible for getting them around the city in this Humvee. And Sergeant Wayne is kind of he's a Vietnam vet, and so he's very just a big teddy bear, but very he has flashbacks, and he's always, we're going to do it for the Corps, and let's go to Saigon, that kind of thing. So you're going to love Sergeant Wayne when you read him. So, but that was the reading from the book. And so they walk off together and they have breakfast. There's a little more to the story, so that's not the ending of it. There's a little more to it. So there you go.
I really enjoyed that. That was. I gotta ask. There was a kiss in your live read. Is this a clean romance or is there some steam?
I hate to disappoint you guys, but it's very clean and very sweet romance. There's no.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I do. I like that. I'm just scrolling because I saw a lot of questions that I do want to pop up with the time that we have left. I think I'm going to answer this, but I'm going to pop them up. One, Karen's asking, are your books standalones?
Real quick, Tina, if you want to go over 9 o'clock, I've got all the time in the world for you and all the people on the podcast tonight. So I'd be more than happy to stay past 9 o'clock. So if we want to answer all the questions, I'd be more than happy to do that. This is fun.
I can see that already. But
okay.
But not too much over.
Okay.
But
hey Karen, yeah. Okay, Karen. Book standalone. The books are standalone, so it's different stories. The only continuous thing is the redhead is the heroine. So in for instance, in the Hemingway book, Darcy is between jobs. Tottenham, there's a female soccer player. There's a bar owner in Ghostwriter and a heart surgeon in the Blue Convertible book. So, yep. So you can read, if you wanted to read the second book first, you could. You don't have to worry about any series or sequences or anything like that.
You can read them in any order. I like that. Yeah. And then Renee is asking, do you write full time or do you have another job?
Yeah, I do have another job. I wish I could write full time, but just can't yet. So, but I do have another job, a full time job. I do video production and photography at Georgia Tech. So I'm able to work with students, and which keeps me young. And you know, being on college campus, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm 18 again, which is kind of a cool thing. But to kind of expound on your question a little bit, um, sometimes you really have to make time to write. When I was writing the first book, I would have to get up sometimes at 4:30 in the morning, and this is when our kids were a little bit younger, because that was really the only time I had to write before I had to, help them, get up, get dressed, get them to school, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I wish I could do it full time, but with a job, sometimes you have to get really creative with when you write. But Tina, you could probably attest this. It is a labor of love, and so getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah, I don't like to get up early, but if it's something that you love to do and you're passionate about, yeah, it's not so hard.
It's not. And do you discipline yourself to write? Do you have a word count that you want to achieve every day?
hmm what's funny about that? I respect people that do that. I like the panners and plotsters. I'm trying again, plotters and pansters. There we go. I respect plotters because I wish I could be that structured, and I wish that I could. Sometimes I could do that. So I have nothing against them. It's just I go a different way with a word
Right.
count. I usually don't. It's like if I have the idea in my head, I'll write it out, or if I'm somewhere, I'll jot it down in a little notebook and then transfer it to my big notebook, and then maybe add a little bit more to that. And a tip that I learned and from Hemingway, he wrote a book on writing, Hemingway's book on writing. He said, and it really didn't make sense to me till I started writing, but he said, when you're writing and it's going really good, what you should do is you should stop before you get to the end. So it's like, okay, I'm going to stop because I know I've got this much more to go. And I'm going to pick it up the next morning, because then you pick it up the next morning, you're already in a groove. So you don't have to start cold. So if you know where you're going to go with the story, go as far as you can, leave a little bit extra. Next morning, come back, start with where you left off. And then that way you're coming into the next day in your writing a little bit warmer and not cold. Because sometimes when you start cold, it's like, man, I can't do anything. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. So, and I try to incorporate
That's
that as well.
interesting.
But,
And
yeah.
then the other thing I get asked a lot, do your characters talk to you?
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. There are times when I'll write just the pages and pages of just crap, just awful stuff. And in my head, I'm thinking, Sienna's sitting there thinking, Ivan, what the hell are you doing? You got us in here and we're sitting here waiting for something good to happen. And you're writing just drivel, what are you doing? So I kind of, it kind of motivates me. And I think, Tina, you probably have done this before, but I talk to my characters and I think of them as real people. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, and I don't know about other writers, but for me, it's like if they're real people, they come alive on the page or in the laptop when I transfer it, and they come alive in the book. When I see them and I know their characteristics, I know like Sienna loves bourbon. I know the way that Samantha, smelled after a game, with all the sweat and the dirt and all that. And so they became real to me. And so I think that's a big help in making them real for the reader. So yes, they talk to
That
me. I think about them. I
exactly.
talk to them, that kind of thing. Yeah,
And I tell myself, if they seem real to me, then I'm confident that they're going to seem real to the readers.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the thing with writing a series is you just really get to know these people. By the end of
Yeah.
8 books, it's like, okay, they must live next door because I really know these people. You know.
Yeah,
I have a
totally
question
agree.
regarding characters. It was early on in our chat, but I'm going to pop it up. But Gail was asking, what character do you relate to the most?
Wow. Gail, great question. What's funny? Hmm. I I think when we write, we have a connection to the characters, so we relate to them because a lot of what we're made up of goes into those characters. But I think with for me, if I had to choose one, it would be Darcy Davenport. Even though I don't have red hair, but Darcy is the kind of girl that is always glass half full. She's kind of stumbled through life. She's not really sure, she doesn't have a direction. She doesn't, she's very good hearted, well mannered, well intended, but just doesn't find that success, doesn't, and then finally she meets George and everything turns out all right. And I identified with that so much. I remember this kind of a personal story, but I remember when I was in my 30s. My father was in an accident and he was getting ready to have surgery, and it didn't really look good for him. We weren't sure what was going to happen. And I remember I came to his hospital room. I was living in Atlanta. This was up in Tennessee where my parents live. And I came to his hospital room the day before the surgery because I was getting ready to go back to Atlanta. And I said, I held his hand and just kind of looked at him. And I said, Dad, if you promise to come out of this surgery, I promise I'll grow up and start being the man that you would be proud of. Oh, wow. And I remember he got tears in his eyes and he nodded and all that. And my father was proud of me. It wasn't like Sarah and her mother. It wasn't anything like that. But I always felt that I fell short. My brothers were always the ones that were the success, and my sisters were always the success. And I was just I was the youngest. I was kind of, floundering and, always had well intentions, but just didn't know, the direction. So I remember I said that to him. And unfortunately, that was the last conversation my father and I had. And,
I'm sorry.
He passed away. So I think I took a lot of those times, not, the disappointments and the times when I was like, wow, my father really, he probably, is not upset with it, but disappointed in me, that kind of thing. And so I kind of took some of those experiences and put them into Darcy's character. And so Darcy, I think if I had to choose one that I would be closest to, it would probably be her. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about your father.
Oh, Tina, I appreciate that. Yeah, he passed away in 96, so it's been a while. But it's funny, the week of his death, I always know when it is because it's like, wow, why do I feel sad? Why do I feel, it's like, no, this is the week where your father died. So I still, even though it was so it was 28 years ago, but still I feel that deep inside, and I think about those times, but just for the day, that sort of thing. But
right, yeah. I hear you. Okay, I'm going to take one more question from Renee. We're going to have to wrap it up here soon. Renee says, other than work and writing, what do you enjoy doing as far as recreational?
Wow, great question. Thank you, Renee. It's funny because I think, and Tina, you probably have hit this as well. When you write and when you do, books, especially several books, you're doing a series. It's very time consuming, and it consumes you in another way too, where it's like you could be going to the grocery store and you'll be kind of on autopilot when you're driving, and it's like in your head you're thinking, okay, I gotta figure out, I've got a plot hole here, and I gotta figure this out. And so it's like sometimes you got to shut your brain off and say, okay, what can I do? I'm a big sports fan. So I grew up in Knoxville. So I followed the Tennessee, the Vols. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. So, of course, many heartbreaks there. So there's no happily ever afters, with following the Lions. So, but sports is a big thing for me. Another thing that I like to do, and it's interesting because, I tell stories with words and paper and that kind of thing in books. I like to make videos of and tell stories through videos as well. So it's kind of a different medium, but I still get that same fulfillment and that enrichment to where it's like, wow, I just told a story and I used music and I used an interview and I used sound and I used video and was able to create a story. And back again, when we talked about these stories live forever. So I think doing video production is a big thing for me. I'm a big dog person. We have a dog. Her name is Beasley. So I get to play with her a lot, and it's it's kind of cool. She's a rat terrier. She's a rescue. We rescued her from the animal shelter. So she's a sweet girl. So and actually I have pictures of her on my all my social media pages. So yeah, you can check her out. So.
I will. I have a Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah, that's a good one.
They're awesome dogs. She's slowing down a little bit, but actually a lot, but. They're great dogs. I see one more question I want to put up here. Tammy's asking, do you have a favorite place to be when you write?
Yeah, Tammy, thank you for the question. What's interesting about that is I don't know if I have a favorite place to write. Now, as you can see, like we're in what's called the Hemingway room. This is my man cave / writing room. And gosh, I wish Hemingway would come and like help me be a better writer. So I named the room after him. Maybe his ghost will come and say, okay, thank you. It's like, Hemingway, help me with this. I'm struggling, that sort of thing. So maybe one day the quality of my writing will improve. But I like to write in here. As you can see, you can't see like forward, but in this room, all these bookshelves are all the way around the writing room. So I look up sometimes, I'm like, wow, that person wrote that book and that person wrote that book. Okay, no sweat. You need to get down. You need to start working on your book. So I get a lot of inspiration. And I've got some framed pictures of Hemingway, like, at his typewriter and those kind of things. And so that's it's kind of like like I said, it's the Hemingway room, so it's kind of a cool place to write. What I found, what's interesting is sometimes what I'll do if I'm in the waiting room at my doctor or if I'm getting my car serviced, it's like I'll pull out the notebooks or whatever, and I could just fly through it, and so it's weird, but finding little places like that I didn't really think, boom, I can do it there. The other thing, and I don't know, hopefully you guys will think this is funny, but I have as far as like ideas, and when I'm thinking about my stories, if something doesn't work out right, I get the best ideas in the shower. Don't ask me why, but I get in the shower and it just flows. It's like the water coming out of the.
And how do you write down those ideas in the shower?
I'm glad you asked, because here's the thing: I lost so many ideas in the shower because by the time I got out of the shower, got dried off, I'm like, okay, now wait a minute, who was doing this? Whatever. I found on Amazon, they sell waterproof writing pads. So it's a little writing pad. It's about this big. Yes, and it's got little suction cups on the back of it. You stick it on the wall, and and there's 2 little waterproof pencils, and the paper's waterproof. And so I'm like, oh, okay, boom. So there you go. So they sell them on Amazon. So if anybody gets the ideas in the shower like I did, so silly, but
and it doesn't wash away.
Sell waterproof pads. Yeah,
it doesn't wash away in the shower.
Oh, no, it doesn't. It's cool. It's the pads are waterproof. So boom, yeah. Okay. So you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Well, Ivan, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been a thrill. But what I want to do for a couple of things is, number one, you're doing a giveaway. So I appreciate that. If you want to tell our readers what it is you're giving away.
Okay. I am going to give away the latest release, The Redhead Who Loves Hemingway, so you can read more about Darcy and George and if they get together at the end. So that will be the giveaway, and I would be happy to autograph it. Here's the thing. I'd be happy to send you an ebook or a paperback. Now, if it's a paperback, then I can autograph it and send it to you. But if you like the ebook better, no problem. It'll get to you quicker anyway, because I can just do it on Amazon. But just let me know your preference, and I will get a book out to you.
So. Perfect. And you've asked me to choose a winner for you, which I would gladly do. And I will do it after the chat, and I will tag you in the group after I picked a winner, and then I will ask the reader to just reach out to you, and you guys can connect with the details. That sound good?
Absolutely. And I look forward to to whoever the lucky winner is. Let me just say real quick, I know we have to wrap it up, but let me just say, and I wish I could, like I'm seeing Karen and I see Diana and Tammy and Dana and Virgie and Laura and all that. I wish I could answer every one of your questions individually. And I am so sorry that we didn't get a chance to do that. But just to let you know, I am so appreciative that you guys spent your time with Tina and I tonight. Thank you so much. And I look forward to spending this time again when the next book comes out, because you guys are great.
Definitely. But I was going to suggest to you after the live chat, because I know there's a lot of questions we didn't get to. But if you go to my author page and in the group, you can go in there and just type your answers to those questions. Great. Just scroll through the comments, because the feed does get separated after the live has stopped. But you will see all the comments, all the questions on my author page feed, and also in my group. And feel free to go in there. The readers will probably love it. Might take you a while, but you can go in there.
That'll be fun.
And answer the questions.
And they can also. Go ahead, Tina. Oh, I was just going to say they can also reach me on all of my social media pages as Author Ivan Scott, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X as they call it. let's see, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. Oh, real quick, Tina, on Pinterest, what the reader can do, I've got each of my books on my Pinterest page. They can click on it and they can see exactly who I saw as the characters and the settings. And so I have it all left up. This is this character. This is the inspiration behind this character. So Pinterest is another page. On my YouTube page, I have a soundtrack for each of my books. So it's like kind of like a movie soundtrack. So if there's a inspiration behind a song, or if there's a song mentioned in the book, it's in the soundtrack. So in the YouTube page, you can see exactly what the musical soundtrack is. So please feel free to reach out on social media, because that's a great way to interact.
Oh, yeah, it really is. I love social media. And if you're on Pinterest, you should join my collaboration board. I have 32,000 members on the collaboration board.
All right.
You can feel free to put your books up in there.
Oh,
but reach
great.
out to me on Pinterest under Tina Hogan Grant, and I'll get you on the board.
Okay.
But there's like 119,000 pins on that thing.
Wow. Well, you got 32,000 followers. You are very popular.
That's not my followers on Pinterest. That's how many people are on the board.
Oh, on the board. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Check it out. Check it out. And the other thing I want to do is I always do a giveaway also on this chat, and that is a $5 Amazon gift card. Most of the readers here know how to do this one. You go over to my author page, you share this video across social media, share it to your favorite groups, on your own personal page, wherever you like to share it, but do tag me in the share so that way I know you shared, and you'll be entered into the $5 Amazon gift card. So there we go. Wow. Ivan, this has been a blast. I wish we could talk for another hour.
Hey, Tina, I tell you what, in the next book, let's make it a 2-hour slot, because we'll be able, we'll do that.
Sounds good. And we'll get you on the calendar.
Sounds great. Look forward to it. Thank you so much. And I would love to come back anytime.
Sounds good to me, Ivan. And thank you, everyone, for hanging with us and the questions. And hopefully, Ivan will find some time and go in and answer some of the questions personally.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Good night.